Well, excellent. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you have the pleasure of joining you from. If you're live today, thanks for jumping on. We will be taking questions at the end. And if you're joining us from our YouTube recording session, please, if there are any questions at the end, we'll give you that email address. But today we're excited. We're excited to have one of our clients here to sort of walk us through how they got to where they needed to be in their PPM journey. They are fresh off of finishing their phase 1 and 1.1 and are eager not only to get into the new features and functionality of their modern PPM solution, but also to share with this discussion that we're having today, but also, with other clients that are on a similar path. So wanted to first welcome everybody and thanks for joining. Before we do get started, we are going to just have this cadence go through. So every Tuesday or every other Tuesday, we'll be having some webcasts. You can see the upcoming webinars are here. What we like to do is record all of our webinars. So again, if this is a recording you're joining for, you could search for others. You could subscribe to our YouTube channel. The next one that's coming up, big buzzword that's happening out there every day is AI, whether it's Chat GPT or if it's an inherent AI, AI bot or something else, the generative AI within the application. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to turn the lens a little bit and dial and focus it in and around portfolio management. So what does that mean from a tool perspective, but also processes, and how are people gaining or maybe being held back by the recent AI releases? So make sure to join us for that. And then the next couple, we're going to be really getting into this modern ecosystem, one that Jared's going to sort of walk us through, but we're actually going to get into a little bit more details. So we're going to show some screens, do some walkthroughs, and really get it hands-on in that. And the last, we're going to talk about reporting. We've been asked about reporting across the way. Today, Jared's going to be talking about some of those benefits and really some of those aha moments that their organization had. But that's the next three. As always, we always invite you to submit requests for different topics and also from our different partners that are out there. So make sure you're always looking on our website or other things out there for some really great webinars that are up and coming. Well, with that said, and the dawn of fall is here, we reached out to Jared and said, "Hey, Jared, we'd really like to just have an open conversation with you, maybe record it. And if we can help some others that are out there, that's the goal of what we're trying to do." So I'm really excited to have Jared here representing Redeux Energy. It's a cool organization. I'm going to let him tell you all about it. But before I do that, the guy speaking to you right now is I'm Jacques, and I'm with PPM Works. We've been around since the late 1990s, actually, in the industry, and we've been working on tools and working from portfolio management, working as far as a trainer, but also our big win every day is making sure that our clients understand what's out there. We can tell them the different options and really work with them as a trusted advisor to make the right decisions. And that's really what we wake up every day for. And it really, really excites us. And I want to turn it over to Jared just for a little bit of introduction, because not only is he a great guy and he has a really cool background, but what he's been doing there and how quickly they've advanced since they came knocking on our door not too many months ago. Jared?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jacques. Appreciate it. So yeah, I'll start with, who Redeux Energy is. We are a utility scale solar and battery storage developer. So we've been around for a couple years now and have really kind of kicked off this last year. But we have a structured process where we analyze electric markets across the US. And then from that, we launch prospecting efforts where we go find suitable land where we could build solar farms on. And the solar farms we're looking at are, 1,000 acre plus type solar farms, really large scale. But then after we, get a good piece of land signed up, then we work through a diligence effort where we de-risk, design, pretty typical like kind of waterfall approach, if you will, to get that project what we call shovel ready, where we will, ultimately get it, constructed and built and tied into the grid. And like I said, for the last year, we've really been in the build phase for the company. We actually just launched our first transaction where we get these projects up to a point where they're shovel ready, and then we sell them to other companies that will ultimately build and install these onto the grid. So we're excited to have finally made it to that point. And then for me, within Redeux, I'm the director of program management, as you mentioned, and I'm largely responsible for architecting our processes across our entire value chain. So going from market selection through that prospecting, land acquisition, and then project development phase. But then I also am in charge of kind of building our systems and tools to be able to successfully plan and then execute on those processes. And one last part I'll say that's just really great about Redeux, and what we've been trying to build is the PMO role or project management role here within Redeux has kind of been a central focus for us. So making sure that we're doing the work to the best of our abilities, right? Not just an afterthought of, hey, did we do that on budget or are we on schedule? But really making sure the process and everything's central to what we do. And probably one of the reasons we reached out to you in the first place. So
That's great. Well, it's exciting space. I think anybody, if they've listened to anything that's going on from the climate can change perspective to just cost savings to helping thy neighbor and community, you guys are doing a great thing, and really, really excited to be a part of that when you came. So you're in a unique spot, right? So you had to really grab the reins, if you will, on an organization that's growing incredibly fast and try to figure out, okay, how do we do this, right? We got our reports over here, we got some data here, and we're really putting out some great information. But how do we go ahead and do that, right? And how do we actually move forward in that process? So for us, if I'm sitting back saying, well, how did it get started? For me, it's really, if you can maybe explain what brought you to this point, what were some of those needs that you recognized that, hey, we're a great company, we have great resources, but we might need some additional help here.
yeah, so when I joined Redeux a little over a year ago, I was like employee number 10, right? So and we did have that philosophy that we wanted processes core to our business, right? We really wanted a high functioning platform, of a business. But really we were in this like natural point of our maturation, right? Like we had at the point in time, like I came in, we were still working in like Gmail, we had some Slack over here. We had,
Sure.
we were trying to figure out project management, but we were using Smartsheet, and it was just a mix of, are those action items or are those a schedule, or how's that actually driving project management across the entire organization? We tried to level up Smartsheet. We tried to make sure all this stuff was integrated, but it just felt like everything was a little bit piecemealed. So really, once our organization grew, a little while after I had been there, we decided like we should really look at this holistically. How do we make sure that like as a platform, if we want to be this high functioning team with top class processes, how do we make sure that's all integrated and working together? And we really, decided that even from the most basic level, like using Teams, Outlook, and just the very basic Microsoft suite, that's really where we should start consolidating. And then as we kind of started moving that direction, we were like, okay, well, what about our project management, which is what I was very focused on. And with that, we started looking at like Microsoft Project and other things like that. But really, the goal was going to be to consolidate.
Yeah, that's great. Earlier, so you're on this journey, as you say, right? And you recognize that there's some needs for consolidation, et cetera. So, it sort of started with what it sounds like, so better communication across the board, right? And being able to not only have that information come in, but we need to get it to the decision makers. And oh, by the way, we're also growing rapidly, hiring new folks, both, out in the land area, but also in the back end and in the PMO, which is always essential, right? And then, as you mentioned, that collaboration piece, getting everything in that central area. And then the area that a lot of people, it might be a dark word these days, but really that governance. And governance might have a good or bad connotation depending on which side of the spectrum you're on. But again, in this case, we needed standardization, right? So you needed something at least to drive you to that point that everybody was at least playing by the same rules. So then you could see where those opportunities were going to lie. So that's great. And that end goal, I loved how you said it. I need to repeat it, that holistic response or platform, right? And whether it was in the PPM area or even the communication collaboration area, that, that's just nice to see. So we took you there through that, the critical needs here, and you're explaining there, getting into what next and sort of how did you get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the needs are really what drove us there, right? It's a good, good way to go about it. And really, we were just trying to find, okay, we need to get into Outlook, we need to get into Teams. Let's go find someone that can do that for us. And in the background, it was like, hey, we also need to level up our project management stuff. We definitely want to build that out. But we were almost looking at those as like two separate things. Like, okay, how do we get our, the basic business going into Microsoft, and then how do we get our project management, like you said, governance, but that oversight? How do we make sure that we're actually doing what we say we're doing?
Yeah.
And then after we were looking around, right, we were like, okay, we need to go find someone to do this migration into Teams, Outlook, get all our files put together. I was also looking for, okay, if we're going to go that route, should we be looking at Microsoft Project? Should we be looking at all these other types of like, Microsoft-based tools, or other? But that's kind of where you're looking. And then ultimately, kind of through YouTube, Gmail, started seeing a little, or not YouTube and Google search, right? Started to find PPM Works, but also little kind of hints of OnePlan mixed in. And then we kind of realized PPM Works had the ability to really help us with both of those scopes, more or less in one shot, really, to make sure that they were all tied together and working together so that we could fully migrate into Microsoft, but then also make sure we were finding the right PPM solution to, help us go where we wanted to go with our platform.
Perfect. Yeah, and I remember that conversation distinctly when you were saying, hey, we're looking for you guys in this area, and might be looking at, this other group for something else.
Yep.
And that's big, and that's a really good point to note in your journey is for those folks that are looking for people out there, ask those questions, right, of your partner or partners. If you're doing something with Microsoft or OnePlan or some other tool that's out there, really dive deep and, like Jared said, is get the help that's out there. A lot of these organizations are partner heavy, meaning they rely on us, the gold certified partners. So from our perspective, a partner is always good and can help you figure out what you need. You don't always need to go with that partner, right? So make sure you feel comfortable. I know Jared, we vetted each other out. Not only do we have a good working rapport, but we were really together as a team. So that's really key. So first you said, define your needs, then, figure out if you need that help. If you do, seek those partnerships and really stay focused on what, the organization's going to bring to you as a benefit, right? So now that we're talking about you found the right team or you're starting to build the right team, um, really what I wanted to talk about really quickly is, sort of those benefits that you were looking for in the PPM solution. And I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with what a modern solution or modern PPM solution. There are a few that are out there. And again, we take a look and we just like with Jared and Redeux, we walk through all three options that are out there and really try to find the best solution. But what a modern PPM across the board, what it should be doing, it should be easy, right? It should be easy to use for the end users. It should be really ability to extend if you need to. And a lot of what people think is, hey, you need to throw away what you're doing and replace. And, Jared, was there any besides the taking Dropbox and moving it you over into the M365 area? What we did is we really took things that you had, great processes, even tools, and said keep using those until we can prove to you or lay a different platform down that you can go ahead and sunset, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that I don't know, it was kind of um, natural, I guess, right? Especially with us being a growing organization, you have kind of the framework of how you want to operate, and kind of how you've been doing it, but you kind of know you're kind of building the plane as you fly it, right? And I think that was what was really nice having your guys' support was, well, how do you ultimately want to do this? So we were able to kind of look forward, kind of continue building for the future and scoping that out. But yeah, it brought a lot of different pieces together in this modern PPM world of, okay, well, you're doing more of an agile approach over here with your land acquisition team. But once you finally get to project development, you're on a timeline, you need to stick that together. So we really were able to work on that as a team.
Yeah, and do you wanna mention just, as far as one plan goes, sort of talk to this slide just a little bit and why, you ended up from a modern PPM solution into one plan directly before we start
Yeah.
talking about your actual journey on one plan?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I will. So we, like we were saying, when we first started meeting, like we had scoped the first part out. Let's get out of Dropbox. Let's get into the Microsoft platform. And then really the other piece was how do we build the best project management system for our platform? And as you mentioned, we looked at a bunch of different options. Initially, my brain was in Microsoft Project. How are we going to do this? But really, as we started doing more research, the questions around how long is Microsoft Project going to be able to fill that role, and how like is that actually going to be the right tool for your dynamic kind of organization, right? With this one part over here being more agile, this part being over here a little bit more waterfall, as well as trying to integrate with our day-to-day activities and tasks and integrating with teams. So what we were really started realizing was, there's other options out there like modern PPM, OnePlan being a great example that we went with. That just integrates so seamlessly with everything. So we have it integrated with Teams. It integrates with all of our other apps. We have people in there doing their day-to-day my work solutions that feeds Power BI, which feeds are coming from our schedules and really does that whole holistic view. And has really become kind of our, one source of truth for everything project oriented.
Yeah, so that's great, and it's that win-win solution, right? And you didn't get away from Microsoft either, right? So you're still on that Microsoft platform. And then just to reiterate those folks that are listening, you could still use Project for those folks in your organization that wants to use Project and needs to get down to that level of detail. We're just talking about, in this case, the platform itself from the enterprise perspective is being supplied by OnePlan. So perfect. All right, so now that we've laid that up, we've got the selection here. Let's start talking about the next set, which is really one of my, this is the whole reason for this discussion. And I get excited when we start talking about clients or other folks that have implemented anything, whether it's with us or without, is really to hear from you, right? Every client has their unique way of doing it. Every client has their challenges that they hit, as well as, their small successes. This, I'm going to sit back and sort of listen to you, and if anybody's out here, you might have gone through something similar, but again, this is really just hearing exactly what you guys did, and then we'll go into both the aha moments and the challenges after.
Yeah. Happy to jump into this. And I think one of the key things, right, is it is a journey. Lots of times you have this vision of what you want, and it's like, how do we just jump there?
Yeah.
But honestly, if I were to say that's where I wanted to be at the beginning of this, and now where we're at today, it's different, right? So you have to kind of work through it. It's a journey. You learn as you go. But really, yeah, I'll start at the beginning. I think after we had engaged PPM Works, you and I, Jacques, in the business development, it was a lot of what are we looking for? What are we trying to solve for? What value are we trying to bring to the organization? And
Mhm.
really just started exploring that, that whole idea so that we could really start honing in on what we were doing. Because I think if it would have been very simple waterfall, we probably just would have stuck to like Microsoft Project, right? But really, we were looking for this whole business-wide platform solution. So that's when we selected OnePlan, and we started really talking about would we be able to configure it to all those different pieces of the business? And I think ultimately we decided it would, right? There was going to be some areas we might be stretching it or, might be a little different, but we'd find ways to work within that. But after we decided, it was the right tool, we met with my leadership, the whole team, and kind of were like, yep, let's go for it. And that's when we scoped our phase one. And that's where we, really talked about, all right, how are we going to get out of Smartsheet? What are all the things we need to get into OnePlan? What's the future path for OnePlan, right? What are we ultimately going to need to build in? We kind of broke that down into what were like the most near-term critical needs, what were the things we needed to build to kind of sustain into this, this new tool, and then what were the ones that we would save, right, for like a phase two approach. So we got that all scoped, and then we got to work with George, who's on the call listening in. But George was our project lead from the PPM Works side, and me and George really spent a ton of time together over the next month. George led a series of envisioning sessions across the entire organization just to make sure he understood and that we documented the needs really well. And then we went into like architecture phase, and we started talking a lot about how is this actually going to work? What was our process? Where would we need to maybe change process, or where did the tool need to flex to do what we needed it to do?
Sure.
And we ultimately, came up with a really cool like modular approach where we had different plan types in one plan that we could connect through our whole program portfolio architecture and stay kind of agile, right? We could kind of build it how we needed it as we worked through our processes. Um, so then after that, George led the build as well, and we got the build out, and then we really started doing the migration from Smartsheet in and actually using the tool. And that was kind of the end of phase one. And then we always knew there'd be a phase two, but we kind of worked this phase 1.1 into the middle, which really was like, okay, it's up and running, but then the key is always you got to make sure you use it, right? You got to get everyone using it. You got to get the whole team adopting it. So we spent, some time in this phase 1.1, as I would call it, to do the enhancements and really drive home like where we might need to do some changes and really get adoption underway. And then lastly was the phase two, which we're doing today, currently working on. But these were those like more advanced use cases, right? We had schedules, but then we ultimately wanted to be able to cost load those schedules and then ultimately resource them, make sure we were doing like optimized portfolio management across the whole value chain. And that's what we're kind of continuing to work on today.
Perfect. So you mentioned that, journey that you were on and how you really got there and really sort of the methodology was there, right? We're going to do this. But I think the key there was you were able to do it in a fluid, I don't want to say agile, right? But more of an iterative approach because, that old cliche, you don't know what you don't know, but really you guys knew where you wanted to be, right? It just, as you got to where you thought you'd be, there was something of higher priority, right? And so you had to, you know, adjust a bit and be flexible.
Yeah.
So with that, I know you mentioned sort of those aha moments that you and the team had. Uh, I know you mentioned the modular approach. You care to share that with the group that's listening today?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would say the modular approach, the really cool thing about that was, there's these things that are called plan types in the tool. So you don't have to just operate under a single, hey, this is your template and this is your project and you build it out. We had, call it modular, but several different plan types based on like the department and the type of projects that we kind of ran through our value chain. And then we were able to link those into a program and then portfolios above that and really kind of build it as we go. Just because of the way our business is, it's this very entrepreneurial, fail fast, take opportunities. So it's just very dynamic. So we were able to find a solution in OnePlan there. And once we kind of solved that from an architecture standpoint, it really made the rest of it come together.
Mhm.
Because at first it was kind of the how do we fit so many different types of work into one tool, and that really helped us with that. Um,
Yeah,
and then yeah,
curious right there. Do you think that modular approach would go across all industries? Because you've been in other industries yourself as well, or is that just sort of the newer way of implementing a solution? What's your thought on that for other folks that are sort of looking in?
yeah. I mean, I think I would say it's very likely other organizations could use that, right? I think it just depends on how the business is set up. We work through a very kind of wide range from the beginning of our work to the end. And we really wanted this project management tool to span the entire company's value chain, right?
Hmm.
So I think sometimes people focus on project management only being like this one really small part when you have a project and it's got like a number or something like that. But if you want to be able to track the projects that fed that and the work ahead of that, then this modular approach really does work well because you can have different like types of work going on that tie to each other. So I think almost any business has that, right? It just depends how you want to implement it and where you want to track. But um, it worked really well in our business just because of that entrepreneurial, very fluid, dynamic, agile, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's not consistent. We're not building just one widget over and over and over and over and over again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then I guess maybe just jumping down the rest of the list. I think the other, thing, and you mentioned that there's another webinar coming up, but reporting is massive, right? So OnePlan is a great tool that we've been enabled, and I've been referring to that as that's the tool we build our value in, right? Like we need everyone to use the tool. That's where all the inputs are. But then we're utilizing Power BI that pulls directly from OnePlan, but that's where we like actualize the value. And as soon as we had some key hires along the way in this transition, but working with your team as well as our internal team growing, we were able to just come up with some amazing reporting, and just the insights that we're able to get and the visibility has just been, pretty incredible, I'll say. Like we had a meeting with our some of our board members the other day, and it was just like, oh, pop up Power BI and let's just start like, pivoting and manipulating and kind of being able to tell the story of what's going on and how things are progressing. And it's incredibly powerful. And as soon as we started seeing that, then you just kind of continue that build path, right? With like how you want the data to go into the tool and then really be able to show that value through the reporting.
No, that's great, and especially a real life example, right? Using
Yeah.
it during those, board meetings or executive meetings, and even just that communication ability to do that. And you also keyed on something that I think is really key here, which is the ability to grow your own team, right? Throughout this entire process, it's, build from within, not only the tool perspective, but once that platform is up there, now you get the resources to actually expand in those areas. And it sounds like, you've been doing that in the Power BI area, but also, curious as your maturity starts increasing up this maturity level of where those next acquisitions and hires will be. I say acquisitions because it might be another company, but also from a resource perspective of folks that are coming in. That's great to hear. So with every aha or success, the other thing is, the ability to recognize that you may have faced challenges, right? And I know we talked about a few of them. I thought maybe you could take some time here and really just walk through, you mentioned two, but if there's any others that you want to share with the group now, this is probably something that people would really want to hear from you.
Yeah, it's not all roses, right? Yeah, it's always difficult. The journey comes with challenges. And I think, yeah, number one there, I think that's just our world today, right? Like
Sure.
we're never gonna just sit back and just be able to do the way we've been doing it forever. So change management's always an issue. But whenever you're evolving your processes, bringing in new systems, new tools. Change management's key. We could roll this tool out and say, here you go. But if no one uses it, what's the value, right? So getting the change management and really focusing on that, spending a lot of times with teams, not just training, but being in like the trenches with everyone, right? And like working through it, making sure that it's functioning the way you want, you get the value out of it. So we spent a lot of time on that. And I think that's, again, why we had that like phase 1.1 was, hey, we need to spend a little time using this and making sure that we have kind of like quick wins. So that's super important. And then the other one, OnePlan is, it's been a great tool, but it's a new tool also, right? So it's really cool. It's been this middle ground, right, between like a maybe crazy advanced super scheduler for like construction management and like a more lean like Monday.com or something like that that doesn't have a ton of bench strength. I don't know what you want to call it, but OnePlan finds this nice middle ground where it's got a lot of advanced functionalities, but also very user friendly. But as you start working through it, you kind of start to find, oh, I really would love to have this. The nice part about it being a new tool is they're taking that feedback. So we submit enhancement requests and little, fixes all the time. And we actually get feedback from OnePlan, usually like the day of or the next day, talking about like if it already is in their roadmap or if they're working on it or if they're going to add it to their roadmap. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like you're in this new tool. So there's some things you find that are to be desired, but then the other side of that is they're taking those those bits of requests and building them into the tool. So you only kind of see the tool getting better. But that's been a challenge and a benefit, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's great, and that's one of the main reasons why we not only use OnePlan and use our products on OnePlan, but also the same thing, the responsiveness that we find out, and from a partner perspective, we have input not only into the product side of it, but also the process piece of it, like you mentioned, and being able to share that directly. Another plug there is, having these customer advisory boards that you guys are on, and other clients that you actually have that direct, link into it. So all in all, yes, and change management, regardless of what we're doing, that's going to be a big one. We talked about that even before starting, so it's good to know that, yeah, it still was a challenge, even though we knew it was going to be, right? That's why we're in the business, all of us, is to keep that, keep the risk down, and really look at that. So from an overall perspective, I guess the big question that you've probably been asked by your CEO, as well as some of the folks, because for all intents and purposes, it was Jared's tool, Jared's project that he put in, right? So how do you see, from a perspective on across the entire organization, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, it's brought us all together across all our teams. We're all working in this tool now. So we all have like kind of a consistent way to work. But I think, I mentioned the example with presenting to the board, but even a level down from the board, visibility has probably been one of the biggest things, because we have this holistic tool, right, with visibility and reporting, but you can really say, how are things going, and not just like email someone and someone just gives you a really vague response like we're working on it, right? You can actually say, okay, well, where is it at, right? And you might not even have to go send that email, because you can pop up a Power BI dashboard and be like, oh yeah, it's in progress, they're expecting it next week. Right? Or, oh, it's been delayed, maybe we should set up a meeting. But that whole visibility has been a game changer for us, and it's really tying teams together and making sure that like communication is happening how we wanted it to happen.
Okay.
That's been a big one. That in that board examples, I think probably like a top tier one, right? Being able to have that, I think they're super excited. Puts a lot of trust into what we're doing. They don't have to just say, hey, once a month you scramble and get this, PowerPoint together. It's like, oh, you guys are just doing this live, and we can just ask you a question and it's going to be consistent every time. Like, wow, okay. Like, the trust that comes with that's great.
Sure.
So yeah.
Perfect. No, that's great. And it's great to hear that, but also how you grow. And the next, you're always looking ahead as well. So can you share with us, sort of the next 6, 12, 18 months, whatever you're thinking about more from a business plan perspective, but also sort of the tool and the solution?
Yeah, for the next few months, we're heavy into this phase two implementation. So as I kind of mentioned, our focus on those is getting cost loading into our projects so that we can do like a actual cash flow and our schedules drive that real time, and then getting resources into our schedules as well, so we can make sure that we're not overloading the system, right? Or certain roles within the system, and we're able to kind of levelize that. Those are our two biggest items that we're working on for the next couple months. But we also have plans to do a lot of automation. I think in that one picture we were looking at a little earlier, Power Automate's in there, and OnePlan can utilize Power Automate. So we're looking at use cases for how we can streamline things with that tool. But ultimately, probably into 2024, we're looking at making sure this is just all connected in a way where we can do like our full annual plan, right? And say, hey, here's everything that needs to take place over the next year, be able to do a baseline and show if we're, tracking how we want to, where do we have risks, where are there issues. That's kind of like the gold star for us, is really being able to really track performance at a very large level on our portfolio.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really good. I want to thank you again for being here. I know we have a few more things we want to talk about, especially, some excitement that happened recently over there at Redeux. Maybe you can share a little bit about this and really what that means, not only for those that are listening, but also to your sector, right?
Yeah, so kind of again back to the beginning, where with our business model, ultimately we're trying to find really good spots for large scale solar and battery implementations. And now that we've really gotten through one of our first big years, we are bringing 1.7 gigawatts. That's like 11 solar farms that we're working on selling this quarter and going into early 2024. And then
Wow.
hopefully, those get acquired from some, well, we are intending very much so that they're acquired by very credible power producers. And then ultimately, 2025 or so on, we have more clean energy that we have helped create going into the US power grid. So yeah, we're really happy to kind of be moving into this phase for the business, and excited to see where we go into 2024.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, definitely congrats on that. It's awesome to see, and exciting, not only to help the business and the industry, but also, sort of that renewable solar and, and it's just amazing. Now, I know a few folks wanted to figure out, so, where do we get started? How's the approach? I'll spend a couple seconds on that. But again, you heard it from Jared today, really what the solution should be and what ours is just to keep it simple, right? Is you want to make sure that we're getting a centralized solution for you. We give you the options, and we also give you our recommended option. It's not necessarily the one you need to choose, but this is really how we, you know, work with our clients and level it. And the biggest thing is ease of use, and then that seamless deployment. Again, Jared, you mentioned it. If people aren't using the tool, then what's the point, right? So that's really what it is. Also, a lot of folks wanted to get a little bit more information. Jared said he was Googling out there, looking at YouTube. This is one of the areas that, we'd love to have you subscribe out there. So please, put a plug in for us. Go ahead and subscribe to that. You're not going to get barrage, but it's going to be information, these short bits. Like today was about, 35 minutes. This might be a longer one, but typically they're much shorter than that. And then also, if you're looking to get started, whether it's in a modern solution, or you want to go down an avenue, maybe a hands-on Teams or anything else, Power Power Platform, just let us know and we can reach out to you. Most importantly, reach out to us. You got Jared here, you got me. Make sure you get those QR codes, link in with us. We'll be happy to, follow you and take a look at what you're doing. You can always ask us questions, right? If you have any question for Jared or for me, you can put it in info@ppmworks.com and we'll make sure we get that to the right person there. And then all those recordings that we said, again, last plug there is get up there on the YouTube. You can see all the recordings that are there, both from us as well as our partners. So Jared, I want to thank you very much for, the time that you had, the first 1 and 1.1 phase that we're in, and as well as the 2.0 phase that we're going. It's been a great partnership to this point. But more importantly, I appreciate from my inquisitive side of implementer that you were able to share all that information of how you got to where you need to be. And I'd be really excited to hear back from you, in phase 2 and beyond, and get you back onto one of these.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, sir. Well, have a great day out there, and we'll talk again soon.